Hello and welcome. My name is James and today I'm going to tell you a story, an African folk tale. This story takes place in Ethiopia a long time ago, in a village with valleys and small hills, forests and mountains, and lots of wild animals. And in this village lived a little boy, a happy little boy named Haley. He lived with his mother and father. But one terrible night, a few weeks after he had turned 9 years old, his mother died. Haley was so confused, so angry, and so hurt. Then, after a year had passed, his father decided to remarry, as was the custom at that time. But Haley still was so hurt, so confused, and so angry. So when he met his new stepmom, Zenyab, and she tried to hug him, he pulled away. When she made his favorite dinner, he didn't eat. And when she made him fine play clothes out of the best cloth, he ran through the forest and destroyed them. And when she spoke to him, he ignored her. One day, while Zenyab's husband was out hunting, she went to his room and spoke to Haley. Haley, I love you, and I need you to love me. But before she could finish, Haley had jumped up and shouted, I hate you. You're not my mother. I'm running away. Zenyab looked frozen, and Haley ran out of the house. Zenyab sat down and began to cry, and when her husband got home, he asked her what had happened, and she told him. He said not to worry, that he would go and find Haley, and that's what he did. He walked down to the river and down to Haley's favorite spot. They walked home, had dinner, not saying a word. Later that night, as the two slept, Zenyab slipped out of bed quietly and out the door and into the forest toward the witch doctor's house. The witch doctor was wise with people's hearts and minds. And so when she went into the witch doctor's house, she said, Please, help me. I need a potion, a love potion, to make my stepson love me. Well, said the witch doctor, if I'm going to make you a love potion, you'll have to bring me a lion's whisker first. Zenyab's eyes widened and she said, How am I supposed to do that? Use your imagination, said the witch doctor. So Zenyab left the witch doctor's house and she walked back into the house quietly, back into bed for the few hours of sleep that remained. Before the sun had come up, she quickly went to the fridge, grabbed 4 pieces of meat, and slipped out of the door. This time she walked up the mountain and saw a cave. The cave had lots of big paw prints around it, and she thought this must be a place where a ferocious lion lives. So she grabbed 1 piece of meat and set it in front of the cave and walked backwards, slowly and slowly, till she was 50 yards away and hid behind a bush. She watched, and sure enough, a ferocious lion walked out of the cave, looked at the meat, looked around, back at the meat, and then he began to eat. And he ate it all up. Zenyab's heart was beating. But again, she walked to the front of the cave, and she set down another piece of meat. This time she walked back slowly, 25 yards, and hid behind a bush and watched. The lion again came out and and sniffed the meat, looked around, looked up at Zenyub, back down at the meat, and began to eat. He ate it all up and went back into the cave. Zenyub's heart was beating, but again she went to the front of the cave and put another piece of meat. This time she walked back slowly 5 yards and hid behind a bush. The lion again came out, sniffed the meat, looked up at Zenyub, back down at the meat, sniffed it, and ate it all up. Zenyub's heart was beating fast. But again, she put another piece of meat down at the front of the cave and waited. This time, she did not walk back. She stayed right there. The lion came out, looked up at Zenyub, looked at the meat, back at Zenyub, and then began to eat. Zenyub, with all of her nerve, reached out slowly to the lion's whisker, pulled that whisker out, and the lion barely flinched, still eating his meat. He finished up, looked at Zenyub, and walked back into the cave. Zenyub's heart was beating a mile a minute, and she walked backwards slowly until she was out of view, turned around and ran back to the house where the witch doctor was. And Zenyub rushed in and said, "I've got it! I've got the lion's whisker! Now make me the love potion." Aye, it does look like a ferocious lion's whisker, but alas, I've got no love potion. "What do you mean?" screamed Zenyub. "Well, tell me, how did you get that lion's whisker?" "Well, I was patient and persistent, and I was very quiet." "Aye, and you were courageous. So now you know everything you need to know about how your stepson will love you without a magic potion." It was then that Zenyub understood. So she returned home and treated Haley just as she always had. If he was rude to her or ignored her, she just went on about her business. And in 3 weeks, Haley began to smile and talk to her. And in 6 weeks, he began to ask if he could help her with the chores. And in 9 weeks, he took her to his favorite spot down by the river. And after a few months, one night when Zenyub was tucking Haley into bed, he said to her, "Zenyub, I love you." And that's the story, The Lion's Whisker. Thank you.